Welcome, everyone! Today, we're diving into a what-if scenario set in the Naruto universe. The story is called Naruto Copy System by Dragon NX. If you're intrigued by this amazing tale, be sure to check out the full story through the link in the description. Sharingan? Everyone was stunned, even Hikaru. It wasn't just that Shin had the Sharingan, it was that it was a three-tomo Sharingan. Shin, why do you have the Sharingan? Tsunade asked, shocked. Shin scratched his head. It's a long story. Let's deal with these guys first. Kushina, Mikoto, stay back, he said to the girls. The enemies were all Jonin level or higher, Kushina and Mikoto wouldn't be much help. Seeing his serious expression, they nodded and retreated. Uzumaki Hikaru, allow me to release you from this world of suffering. No need to thank me, we're practically family. Shin's three-tomo Sharingan spun rapidly as he focused on Hikaru. Don't look into his eyes. Beware of Sharingan Genjutsu. Dan shouted. But Shin didn't use Genjutsu. The three-tomo merged, and his Manjiki Sharingan activated. Yomotsu Hirasaka. A dark portal opened in front of Shin. He drew his Kusanagi sword and thrust it into the portal. Thud! Hikaru stared in disbelief as a sword pierced his heart from behind. The light faded from his eyes. Shin withdrew his sword. Hikaru collapsed, a dark portal appearing behind him. Yomotsu Hirasaka had opened a dimensional path from Shin to Hikaru's back. Shin's sword had passed through the portal, killing Hikaru instantly. Yomotsu Hirasaka wasn't just for defense and escape, it was even more effective for offense and surprise attacks. Hikaru's instant death shocked Dan. The other Farouk members looked at Shin warily. What was that jutsu? Dan had a bad feeling about this. They had only been concerned about Tsunade, but this kid was unexpectedly powerful. The Manjiki Sharingan? Tsunade was even more shocked than when she first learned Shin had the Sharingan. The Sharingan wasn't uncommon, the Uchiha clan was still around. But the Manjiki Sharingan was rare. As far as she knew, only Madara Uchiha possessed it. Seems effective enough. Shin flicked his sword, the blood splattering harmlessly on the ground. Fire style, Dragon Fire Jutsu. Wind style, Great Breakthrough. One of the root members unleashed a torrent of flames shaped like a dragon, while another used wind release to amplify its power. Tsunade's eyes widened. Even she would be in danger if hit by that. Most shinobi, except for taijutsu specialists, were physically frail. Tsunade was skilled in taijutsu, but that was due to her strength of 100 seal. Without it, her taijutsu was average at best. She was primarily a medical ninja. She had to dodge. As she retreated, she saw Shin standing still, seemingly frozen in fear. She panicked. Shin, what are you doing? Dodge. She tried to reach him, but it was too late. The fire dragon was upon him. Nice teamwork. Now taste your own medicine. Shin used Yomotsu Hirasaka again, a portal opening in front of him. The fire dragon entered the portal and vanished. Then, another portal opened above Dan and his team. The fire dragon emerged, roaring towards them. They were too close, caught completely off guard. 2 died instantly, and 3 were severely injured. Dan survived, but he suffered extensive burns, his hair and face singed. That's some power. A B-rank jutsu, amplified by wind release, reaching A-rank level. Shin observed the damage with a critical eye. Thwack! Tsunade smacked him on the head, glaring at him. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? She wanted to hit him again, but Shin dodged. I'm fine, aren't I? Shin! Kushina launched herself at Shin, tears in her eyes, and hugged him tightly. She had been terrified. Shin, are you hurt? Mikoto checked him for injuries. I'm fine. Not a single hair out of place. Tsunade, hurry up and attack. They're getting away. Shin pointed at Dan and the 2 surviving root members, who were trying to flee. The two who had died, including Hikaru, were J-nin. Dan and the other two were elite J-nin. Their experience had allowed them to survive the surprise attack. But they knew they were outmatched. They were retreating. Tsunade glared at them, her face contorted in anger. Trying to run? Not so fast. If it weren't for Shin's unexpected strength, they would be dead. She couldn't take on 3 elite J-nin alone. They could even kill her if they worked together. She wasn't at her peak yet. And if Dan's plan hadn't been exposed, he could have launched a surprise attack and killed her easily. Dan's had sent a strong team, a testament to how much he valued Tsunade's life. But he hadn't anticipated Shin's strength. He probably hadn't even considered Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto as threats. This time, he had miscalculated. 3 elite J-nin and 3 regular J-nin. Dan's had suffered a significant loss, especially with Kato Dan, who was likely a valuable asset. Tsunade charged forward, intercepting one of the fleeing elite J-nin. Dan and the other elite J-nin split up, escaping in different directions. Tsunade couldn't stop them both. 3 elite J-nin, running away like scared dogs. How pathetic. Shin watched them go. He had to act now, or they would escape. Yomotsu Hirasaka. He stepped through a portal, appearing behind one of the fleeing J-nin. His sword flashed, slicing the man in two. Ah! Kushina screamed. It was a gruesome sight. She had followed Shin through the portal. Shin looked at the bisected corpse, blood pooling on the ground. It was indeed gory. He hadn't meant to be so brutal, but it was his first time killing with a sword. He hadn't controlled his strength properly. And the Kusanagi sword was incredibly sharp. But still, he had just killed an elite J-nin. It had been as easy as chopping vegetables. With space-time ninjutsu and his lightning-fast swordsmanship, killing was a simple matter, especially against weaker opponents. It was a massacre. After killing the elite J-nin, Shin used Yomotsu Hirasaka to return to Mikoto and Kushina. Mikoto sighed in relief when she saw them. Kushina, what's wrong? She noticed Kushina's pale face and worried she might be injured. Kushina glared at Shin, then shook her head at Mikoto. I'm fine. Just a bit queasy after seeing that mess. Shin, Kato Dan got away, Mikoto reported. Shin looked in the direction Dan had fled. Despite his injuries, the elite J-nin was still fast. Let him run. Some people run in circles, Shin said cryptically. He then turned his attention to the elite J-nin fighting Tsunade. Tsunade had the upper hand, but the J-nin was holding his own with his superior experience. Too slow, Tsunade. Let me help. Flash slash. Without using Yomotsu Hirasaka, relying solely on his speed, Shin appeared next to the J-nin in a flash. His Kusanagi sword blurred, too fast for even Tsunade to see. When Shin sheathed his sword, the J-nin collapsed, 8 fatal wounds appearing on his body. Tsunade gasped. It had taken less than a second, and Shin had landed 8 blows in that time. You have to be decisive in battle. If you fought like that, I'd finish my dinner before you finished your opponent, Shin said, half teasing, half boasting. Tsunade was speechless. Was that really an elite J-nin he had just killed? Elite J-nin were veterans, the strongest forces in each village. Killing one was no easy feat. But Shin had done it in under a second. And his speed, even she couldn't have dodged that. Shin, are you a monster? How are you so strong? Tsunade asked, bewildered. Monster? What are you talking about? I'm a genius. A hard-working genius. Shin looked indignant. I have talent, I work 10 times harder than anyone else, and I have cheats. Why wouldn't I be strong? Tsunade stared at him, speechless. He had a point. But what did he mean by cheats? What about Kato Dan and the other elite J-nin? Tsunade decided to ignore the cheats comment for now. The other elite J-nin is dead. Dan is still running. He got away? Tsunade frowned. I said he's still running, not that he got away. Some people run in circles, remember? Shin activated Yomotsu Hirasaka, opening a portal in front of them. Kato down stumbled out of the portal. He stared at Shin and Tsunade, his burned face contorted in confusion. As he had been fleeing, a portal had suddenly appeared in front of him. He had been too close to stop and had run straight into it. Not so fast, Dan. Try running now. If you escape, I'll admit defeat. Shin smirked. With the mind's eye of Kagura and Yomotsu Hirasaka, there was no way Dan could escape. Dan was in a tough spot. He couldn't use his spirit transformation jutsu here. If he did, he'd be killed instantly. It was a technique meant for stealth and surprise attacks. Well, I'm done playing with you. Shin launched a Rasengan, piercing Dan's chest. Dan didn't even have time to react. This confirmed Shin's suspicions. He could take on Koge-level opponents now and kill Elite Jainin with ease. Even Koge couldn't kill Elite Jainin so effortlessly. Shin could do it because of his speed. Speed was unmatched. Even a Koge, caught off guard, could be killed by Shin in an instant. Shin, why did you kill him? Tsunade looked at Dan's lifeless body. No point keeping him alive. Don't tell me you were hoping to use him as evidence against Dan's? That's pointless. Why? Tsunade had indeed been thinking that. She wanted Dan's to pay for this. Shin didn't know how to explain. Why? Because even with evidence, Hiruzen wouldn't punish Dan's. Besides, Dan was a root member. Knowing Dan's, he would have implanted some kind of safeguard in Dan. He wouldn't be able to reveal anything. You think you can take down the Hokuge's advisor with just Kato down? And do you really think he'd be able to say anything? Even if everything went perfectly, would the Sandaime actually punish Dan's? Shin's question stumped Tsunade. Even with evidence, knowing her teacher, he wouldn't do anything to Dan's. Let's dispose of the bodies and pretend this never happened, Shin said. But the Sandaime approved their involvement. Won't he ask about them? Mikoto asked. Mikoto, you really believe Dan's lies? I guarantee you, the Sandaime never sent him to help us, Shin said with a smile. The Sandaime wouldn't send reinforcements for a C-rank mission. Dan had been lying. Tsunade, you realized that too, right? Shin looked at her. Yes, of course. Tsunade blushed slightly. Whether she had actually realized it or not was another matter. Shin used the fireball jutsu to incinerate the bodies, leaving no trace. Then they returned to Konoha. Shin opened a Yomotsu Hirasaka portal, and they appeared near the village. That space-time ninjutsu can cover such a distance? That's convenient, Tsunade remarked. By the way, where did you learn that jutsu? It's my Manjiki sharing an ability, Shin pointed at his eyes. Tsunade opened her mouth, wanting to ask about his Sharingan, but hesitated. It was probably a sensitive topic. Shin noticed her hesitation. Want to know about my Sharingan? Yes, but if you don't want to talk about it, I won't pry. I'll tell you everything when we get back. Shin wasn't planning on hiding it. If he were, he wouldn't have used his Manjiki Sharingan in the first place. Back in the village, they went to the mission assignment desk and completed their mission, receiving their reward. The reward for a C-rank mission was 10,000 Ryo. It wasn't much, especially since it had to be split 4 ways. 2,500 Ryo each. Enough for a month's worth of living expenses, but for a shinobi, that barely covered the cost of replenishing their ninja tools. After completing the mission, they returned to Tsunade's house, Mikoto tagging along. Seeing Tsunade and Kushina staring at him expectantly, Shin cleared his throat. I know you're curious about my Sharingan. There's no need to hide it anymore. I have Uchiha blood. Shin explained his lineage, revealing that his mother was an Uzumaki, but his father was an Uchiha. So your father was an Uchiha. Do you know his name? Tsunade asked curiously. Shin glared at her. Don't be so nosy. I don't know who he is, and I don't care. Besides, he's dead. He might have feelings for his mother in this life, but he felt nothing for his father. He had never even met the man. Mikoto, you can stay here for now, Tsunade said. Seeing Mikoto's confusion, she explained, it'll be easier for me to train you here. And it's also to protect you from Downs. Tsunade knew Downs was ruthless. After suffering such a loss, who knew what he might do? Tsunade's right, Mikoto. Stay here for now, Shin agreed. He had been about to suggest the same thing. He knew Downs even better than Tsunade. If Mikoto wasn't under their protection, she might be in danger. Even within Konoha, Downs wouldn't hesitate to act. He knew that even if Hiruzen found out, the punishment would be a slap on the wrist. Tsunade, you should be careful too, Shin warned. Tsunade was strong, but she wasn't Kage level yet. If Downs wanted to eliminate her, he could easily send a few elite Genin. If it weren't for Shin, Tsunade would have been killed. Downs wouldn't dare attack me within Konoha, Tsunade said confidently. She was right. Downs might try something outside the village, but within Konoha, he wouldn't risk it. Killing an elite Genin quickly was difficult. Not everyone was Shin. Even Downs himself couldn't take down Tsunade quickly. And if he couldn't finish her off quickly, other Konoha shinobi would intervene. Even Hiruzen wouldn't be able to protect Downs then. Attacking the Senju clan princess? What was he thinking? The Senju clan might have declined, but they weren't extinct. They still held influence in Konoha. Shin, how did you awaken the Manjiki Sharingan? I thought only Madara Uchiha had it. Tsunade was curious. Madara's isn't a normal Manjiki Sharingan. It's the eternal Manjiki Sharingan. And awakening the Manjiki Sharingan is simple. Tsunade's lips twitched. Simple? Then why couldn't so many Uchiha awaken it? Mikoto looked at Shin with curiosity. As an Uchiha, she had heard of the Manjiki Sharingan, but no one knew how to awaken it. Emotional turmoil. If your emotions are intense enough, your Sharingan will evolve. Emotional turmoil was the key to awakening the Manjiki Sharingan. In the original story, everyone who awakened it had experienced intense emotional trauma. Itachi Uchiha witnessed Shisui Uchiha's suicide, which triggered his Manjiki Sharingan. Obito Uchiha saw his beloved Rin Nohara die, and his Sharingan jumped from Tutomo to Manjiki. Shin's Manjiki Sharingan awakening, while not triggered by trauma, was still related to his mental state. If you see your loved one die in front of you, awakening the Manjiki Sharingan is almost guaranteed. That's brutal, Tsunade frowned. How did you awaken yours then? Ahum, I have my methods. Not something people can replicate. The system had played a significant role in his Manjiki Sharingan awakening. Without it, he would have awakened it 2 years later. Fine, keep your secrets. Can you help Mikoto evolve her Sharingan? Tsunade asked. Mikoto looked at Shin hopefully. The Sharingan was a powerful asset for an Uchiha. Evolving the Sharingan also increased chakra and overall strength. I can, but it's a bit unpleasant. Shin looked at Mikoto, considering his options. Mikoto had a bad feeling about this, but she was determined to become stronger. She gritted her teeth. Shin, please. Mikoto, are you sure? Don't blame me later, Shin warned. Mikoto nodded resolutely. Let's go outside then. Tsunade and Kushina followed, curious. Yomotsu Hirasaka. Shin activated his Manjiki Sharingan and opened a portal. Go on, Mikoto. Mikoto, trusting Shin completely, stepped through the portal. She vanished. Seeing Tsunade and Kushina's confused expressions, Shin pointed upwards. They looked up and saw Mikoto falling from the sky. The portal had deposited her hundreds of meters in the air. Mikoto was terrified. Even a Kage would be scared falling from that height, let alone a new Genin. Her Sharingan activated instinctively. As the ground rushed towards her, her fear peaked. The single Tomo in her eye spun rapidly, then another Tomo appeared. She had awakened the Tutomo Sharingan. But she didn't have time to celebrate. She was about to die. Just before she hit the ground, another portal appeared, and she fell through. The portal reappeared in front of Shin. Mikoto stumbled out, almost falling, but Shin caught her. "Mikoto, are you all right?" Mikoto was still in shock, her mind reeling from the near-death experience. "Mikoto, your Sharingan has evolved to Tutomo," Kushina exclaimed. Even Tsunade was surprised. Shin had actually done it. Mikoto, who had been in a daze, finally snapped back to reality, her face pale. "Mikoto, are you all right?" Shin asked cautiously. He knew she wasn't in any real danger, but his method wasn't exactly pleasant. But there was no easy way to force the Sharingan to evolve. Gain came with pain. "I'm fine," Mikoto said through gritted teeth, glaring at Shin. "Aha, that's good." Shin chuckled nervously. Mikoto looked like she wanted to eat him alive. Was it just his imagination? Mikoto tried to calm her racing heart. She was still shaken. "Mikoto, I could probably help you awaken the 3-Tomo Sharingan too. Maybe 2 more falls, and you'll have it. Want to try?" Mikoto took a step back. No way. She couldn't handle that again. She'd rather stick with the 2-Tomo Sharingan. "No, thank you. I'll awaken it on my own," she said quickly. "Is it really that scary?" Kushina asked. Mikoto looked at her. "You should try it, Kushina. Then you'll know." "No, thank you." Kushina had watched Mikoto fall from the sky, just thinking about experiencing it herself made her shudder. Mikoto might have been terrified, but the results were worth it. Her chakra had doubled, and with her 2-Tomo Sharingan, she was now comparable to an elite Chunin. Shin was a bit disappointed that Mikoto refused, but he quickly moved on. He was about to go train when Tsunade stopped him. "Tsunade, what is it?" Shin asked. "You said Madara Ucha doesn't have the Manjiki Sharingan, but the Eternal Manjiki Sharingan. What's that?" "An evolved form of the Manjiki Sharingan." She had forgotten about this earlier, but now she remembered. Yes, the Eternal Manjiki Sharingan is an evolved form of the Manjiki Sharingan. You didn't know that? Shin was surprised. The Senju and Ucha were mortal enemies. How could she not know about Madara's Eternal Manjiki Sharingan? Is it that strange that I don't know? Tsunade glared at him. How do you know about it? I just do. Shin didn't know how to answer. Tsunade gave him a knowing look. She had known from the beginning that he had many secrets. But she wouldn't pry. If he didn't want to tell her, she wouldn't ask. Changing the subject, she asked, what's the difference between the Manjiki Sharingan and the Eternal Manjiki Sharingan? The difference is huge. First, the ocular power. If the Manjiki Sharingan's ocular power is a river, the Eternal Manjiki Sharingan's is an ocean. The Eternal Manjiki Sharingan can use the perfect Susanoo, while the Manjiki Sharingan can't due to insufficient ocular power. Also, the Eternal Manjiki Sharingan can be used without limitations, while the Manjiki Sharingan can't. The ocular power it consumes doesn't regenerate. Overuse leads to vision loss and eventually blindness. What? You're saying the Manjiki Sharingan can cause blindness? Tsunade, Kushina, and Mikoto exclaimed in unison. Don't worry, I'm special. I won't go blind, Shin reassured them, seeing the concern in their eyes. Really? Kushina looked at him skeptically. Don't lie to us. I swear, if I'm lying, I'm a puppy. Kushina finally believed him. Don't worry, I have a way to evolve my Sharingan. I'm going to train now. Shin left to train. Mikoto checked the time and went to the kitchen to cook. Kushina and Tsunade were left staring at each other. Soon, Mikoto finished cooking and went to call Shin for dinner. Smells delicious, Shin said as he entered, inhaling the aroma. Mikoto might be young, but she was a great cook. Shin, I made this chicken soup for you. It's to thank you for helping me awaken my Tutomo Sharingan. No need for thanks, Mikoto. We're friends, we don't need such formalities, Shin said with a smile. Friends? What kind of friends? Kushina interjected, glaring at Shin. Teammates, of course. What else would we be? Shin said innocently. That soup smells amazing. Kushina reached for a bowl, but Mikoto swatted her hand away. Kushina, this is for Shin. Only he can have it. It's my way of thanking him. You have to finish it all, Shin, Mikoto said seriously. HMPH, who cares? I don't even want any, Kushina pouted. Since it's Mikoto's kind gesture, I'll finish it all, Shin said, taking the bowl from Mikoto. The aroma was enticing, it must be delicious. He blew on the soup to cool it down and took a sip. His face contorted. It was incredibly salty. What's wrong? Don't you like it? Mikoto asked with a smile. Shin looked at her. Was it just his imagination, or was her smile a bit creepy? Tsunade, eating quietly, glanced at Shin's face and immediately knew something was wrong with the soup. No wonder Mikoto wouldn't let them have any. Mikoto, it's a bit salty, Shin said with a wry smile. He understood now. This wasn't gratitude, it was revenge. Mikoto was still holding a grudge for the way he had helped her awaken her Sharingan. Salty? Just drink more water then, Mikoto said cheerfully. Shin stared at her. Was she a demon? This wasn't the sweet Mikoto he knew. Mikoto, I helped you awaken your Sharingan, and this is how you repay me. Shin sighed dramatically. You almost scared me to death. Mikoto glared at him. She still had nightmares about that experience. Ahum, it was all part of the process. And look, you have your Tutomo Sharingan now. Shin coughed awkwardly. He had been a bit harsh. Fine, I'll finish the soup. He looked at Mikoto's vengeful expression and sighed. Don't. I might have gone a bit overboard with the salt, Mikoto admitted, taking the soup away. You're too kind, Mikoto, Shin said with a grin. Mikoto blushed and glared at him playfully. Kushina watched their exchange, a pang of jealousy in her heart. Kushina, where are you going? Mikoto asked as Kushina headed out the door. Mikoto, I have something to discuss with Shin. You can go to bed, Kushina said, a slight tremor in her voice. Nope. Mikoto blocked her path, shaking her head. Tsunade-sensei told me to keep an eye on you and make sure you don't sneak out at night, especially to Shin's room. Kushina gritted her teeth. Tsunade was so mean. And Mikoto too. In the end, Kushina couldn't escape Mikoto's watchful eye and had to return to her room, fuming. The next morning, Shin woke up early, but someone was already up before him. Morning, Mikoto. Shin, you're awake. I'll go make breakfast. No, wait until Tsunade and Kushina wake up. Who knows when they'll grace us with their presence? They're both lazy. It's not wise to gossip about people behind their backs, especially when they're within earshot. Tsunade's voice was cold. Shin, did I just hear you call me lazy? Kushina glared at him. Shin was speechless. Had the sun risen in the west today? Why were they up so early? Ahum, I'm going to practice Kenjutsu. Can't let my skills get rusty. See you later. Shin made a quick escape, using Yumotsu Hirosaka to teleport away before Tsunade could catch him. He returned half an hour later for breakfast. Seeing Tsunade and Kushina's icy expressions, he decided to change the subject. Tsunade, should we go on a mission today? It's up to you. If you want to go, we can. If not, I wouldn't mind taking a break. Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto exchanged glances. Kushina and Mikoto looked at Shin expectantly. It was his decision. If he wanted to go on a mission, they would. Shin thought it over. Can we take a B-rank mission? He asked Tsunade. C-rank missions rarely involved combat against ninja. Kushina and Mikoto needed to fight real shinobi to gain experience. He also needed to face stronger opponents to improve. But finding opponents who could challenge him was difficult. He could kill elite genin like they were nothing. Even a quasi-Koge would be a walk in the park. He needed Koge-level opponents. A 10-year-old Koge? That would be a record. Shin didn't believe anyone his age was as strong as him. After all, he had cheats. Even the Sage of Six-Path Suns wouldn't be his match at this age. A B-rank mission? Impossible. The Sandaime won't allow it. The C-rank mission was already an exception. Tsunade shook her head. They were genin fresh out of the academy. The C-rank mission was only approved because of her? If that's the case, we might as well stay in Konoha and train. Shin decided to skip the missions. They didn't need the money, there was no point doing those pointless missions. In the root base, Dan's face was dark with fury. You're saying Tsunade and those brats returned? Yes, Dan-sama. They completed their mission. What about Kato Dan? Any news? Downs was livid. He had sent such a strong force, yet Tsunade had returned, and they hadn't captured that Uzumaki Shin brat. No news. They haven't returned. Dan's anger subsided, replaced by a frown. He had sent them to kill Tsunade. She was back, but they weren't. And there was no news? Something must have happened. Investigate. And don't let Sarutobi find out, Dan's ordered the root member. After the member left, Dan slammed his fist on the table, his anger boiling over. 3 elite genin and 3 regular genin, gone without a trace. How could he not be furious? Sarutobi Hiruzen, I hope you're not involved in this. Dan's eyes narrowed. He suspected Hiruzen had something to do with this. If it were just Tsunade, he was confident she would be dead. That was why he suspected Hiruzen's involvement. Perhaps his actions had been discovered. He didn't suspect Shin. After all, Shin was only 10. Who would think a child could be that strong? So, he blamed Hiruzen for interfering with his plans. Shin, of course, had no idea about Dan's suspicions. If he knew, he would have laughed. Let Dan's and Hiruzen fight amongst themselves. Neither of them were good people. Shin and his team were training, with Tsunade overseeing them. Well, she was overseeing Kushina and Mikoto. She couldn't train Shin, he was stronger than her. Wind-style Rasen Shuriken. Shin threw the Rasen Shuriken. It struck the wooden target and exploded, obliterating the target and leaving a massive crater in the ground. The chakra storm raged for a while. Finally perfected it. Shin was satisfied. He had created thousands of shadow clones to research and refine the Rasen Shuriken, and now it was complete. The Rasen Shuriken was a jutsu Naruto had developed from the Rasengan. It was powerful, but it had drawbacks. It was unstable, required close-range combat, and had the side effect of damaging the user's arm. It was classified as an S-rank forbidden jutsu. But those were the drawbacks of the incomplete version. In the original story, Naruto had overcome those weaknesses after mastering Sage Mode. Shin didn't have Sage Mode, but that didn't stop him from perfecting the Rasen Shuriken. The key to the Rasen Shuriken was stability. With enough control, the jutsu wouldn't harm the user. Shin's Rasen Shuriken caught Tsunade's attention. What was that jutsu? She asked, stunned. I developed it. It's a combination of the Rasengan and wind release. Not bad, who? Shin grinned. Tsunade was speechless. This jutsu was S-rank level, and Shin had developed it. She felt a pang of jealousy. This kid was a monster. How could common shinobi like her compete? Shin, that jutsu is incredible. I want to learn it. Kushina's eyes sparkled as she witnessed the destructive power of wind-style Rasen Shuriken. Shin shook his head. Kushina, it's not that I don't want to teach you, but you're not ready for this jutsu yet. Kushina, S-rank jutsu are beyond your reach for now. They're not easy to learn, Tsunade added. S-rank jutsu were powerful, but also difficult to master. The Rasen Shuriken was no exception, it was an S-rank forbidden jutsu. Training in the Rasen Shuriken was risky, you could easily injure yourself. The Rasen Shuriken transforms wind-release chakra into microscopic needles that attack the opponent's cells directly. Even if it doesn't kill them, it can cause paralysis. But it has drawbacks. If you lose control during training, you can injure yourself. And the incomplete Rasen Shuriken can't be thrown, so you risk getting caught in the blast. It's best to use shadow clones to train in this jutsu. Shin explained the intricacies of the Rasen Shuriken. He had used shadow clones to develop and refine the jutsu before attempting to use it himself. But if Kushina used shadow clones to train, she would run out of chakra quickly. She wasn't ready for this jutsu yet. The chakra consumption is immense. Even with your large reserves, Kushina, you can't handle it. Let's wait until you're older. Fine. Kushina wasn't too disappointed. But Tsunade can learn it. Shin looked at Tsunade. Tsunade had enough chakra. As a Senju, she also possessed the sage body. While it wasn't as potent as Shin's, her chakra reserves were still massive. Despite being an elite Genin, her chakra volume was several times greater than Hiruzen's. A shinobi with the sage body rarely had chakra issues. And those with the perfect sage body had chakra overflowing. You're going to teach me this jutsu? Tsunade looked at Shin, surprised. This wasn't some common jutsu, it was an S rank. Was this kid really interested in her? If you don't want to learn it, that's fine. It's just an S rank jutsu. Nothing special to me. Shin shrugged nonchalantly. He wasn't boasting. The Rasen Shuriken was powerful, but there were stronger jutsu out there. Of course I want to learn it. It's an S-rank jutsu. Even Tsunade couldn't resist the allure of an S-rank jutsu. In that case, call me Shin-sensei. Shin grinned. You're looking for a beating. Tsunade raised her fist playfully. Shin dodged easily. Tsunade's punches were slow to him. Damn it. Tsunade was annoyed that she couldn't land a hit on him. Come on, Tsunade. This is a great opportunity. One sensei's for an S-rank jutsu. Kushina egged her on. Mikoto, don't you think so too? Kushina nudged Mikoto. Yes, I think Tsunade-sensei is getting a great deal, Mikoto agreed with a smile. She and Kushina were enjoying this. Tsunade snorted. An S-rank jutsu for calling this brat sensei? No way. Shin-sensei. Well, it seemed no one was immune to the allure of a good deal, not even Tsunade. Shin was surprised. He had been joking. He hadn't expected her to actually call him sensei. Knowing Tsunade's personality, this was hard to believe. What? Do you want to get punched? Tsunade blushed under their gazes. Calling Shin-sensei felt like a loss of dignity. Since you've made such a sacrifice, Tsunade, I'll teach you the Rasen Shuriken, Shin said with a grin. Tsunade gritted her teeth. She felt like kicking herself. Why had she called him sensei? If she could turn back time, she would take it back and punch Shin instead. Seeing her anger, Shin coughed and started explaining the key points of the Rasen Shuriken. So I need to learn the Rasengan first? Yes, the Rasengan is the basics of the Rasen Shuriken. You can't use the Rasen Shuriken without mastering the Rasengan, Shin confirmed. He had already taught Tsunade the Rasengan, but she hadn't mastered it yet. It wasn't that difficult, though. She should be able to learn it in a few days. By the way, Tsunade, as the Senju clan princess, you shouldn't be lacking in S-rank jutsu, right? Who said I wasn't? I could get my hands on would-release S-rank jutsu, but the other S-rank jutsu are sealed in the Forbidden Scroll by my grandfather. Tsunade explained. She couldn't use would-release. Besides Hashirama, no one else could. And the other S-rank jutsu developed by Tobirama, like the Flying Thunder God Jutsu and the Edo Tensei, were sealed in the Forbidden Scroll. Even if they weren't, she might not be able to learn them. The Flying Thunder God Jutsu required a talent for space-time ninjutsu, and the Edo Tensei was a complex forbidden jutsu. By the way, Shin, don't reveal this S-rank jutsu to anyone, Tsunade said seriously. S-rank jutsu were rare and coveted by even Kage-level shinobi. Revealing it could be dangerous, especially with Dans around. She didn't trust him not to try and steal it. Don't worry, I won't reveal it. And most people wouldn't even force me to use it. Unless something unexpected happened, Shin wouldn't be facing any truly strong opponents for now. And against ordinary Genin, Chunin, or even Jainin, he wouldn't need the Rasen Shuriken. It was much faster to just kill them with his sword. Tsunade nodded, reassured. If only Nawaki was half as strong as you, I wouldn't have to worry. I wonder how he's doing with Orochimaru. At that moment, a certain boy who was shoveling manure sneezed. Is someone thinking about me? Nawaki wondered, then continued his task. As for why he was shoveling manure, Orochimaru had accepted a mission to clean up a farm, which included cleaning up the animal droppings. It was certainly an interesting mission choice. After a day of training, Shin rubbed his stomach. He was hungry. Let's call it a day. I'm starving, he announced to the girls, who were sprawled on the ground, exhausted. No wonder you're so strong. You have endless stamina, Tsunade said, panting. She was exhausted. They had been training intensely for half a day, following Shin's lead, and they were worn out. Shin, however, seemed perfectly fine. Don't compare yourselves to me. I have an advantage, Shin said. The regenerative ability of his perfect sage body was incredible. Unless the training was excessively intense, he wouldn't feel tired. He was like a perpetual motion machine. As they were about to head back, they saw a figure approaching in the distance. It's Nawaki. Shin's eyesight was excellent. He recognized Nawaki from afar. Shin. Sis. There you are. Nawaki approached with a cheerful grin, as if he had just won the lottery. Nawaki, you seem happy. Did you find some money? Shin asked. No, but I earned some. And quite a bit, too. I'm treating you all to dinner today, Nawaki announced excitedly. He seemed genuinely happy. But Tsunade, Kushina, and Mikoto all took a step back. Even Shin instinctively moved away. Nawaki, why do you stink? Tsunade asked, wrinkling her nose. Stink? Do I? Nawaki sniffed himself, but he couldn't smell anything. It wasn't that his sense of smell was faulty, he was simply used to it. He had been exposed to foul odors all day. Nawaki, did you fall into a latrine? Kushina asked suspiciously, taking another step back. No, I was just shoveling manure all afternoon. As soon as he said that, Tsunade, Kushina, and Mikoto retreated even further. Even Shin moved away. Nawaki, are you crazy? Why were you shoveling manure? Shin asked, incredulous. I didn't want to. But Orochimaru-sensei took a mission to clean up a farm, and that included shoveling manure. What could I do? Nawaki said with a grimace. He didn't want to fail his first mission, so he endured the unpleasant task. And the reward was generous for a D-rank mission, comparable to a C rank. Shin looked at Nawaki with sympathy. Orochimaru had certainly chosen an interesting mission. I earned a lot, so I wanted to celebrate. Yakiniku, on me! Nawaki declared grandly. Tsunade's face darkened. Nawaki, couldn't you have at least taken a bath and changed clothes before coming here? You're not here to treat us, you're here to disgust us. Nawaki was bewildered. He was offering to treat them to yakiniku, why were they reacting like this? But with the stench emanating from him, no one had any appetite. Even Shin, who had been hungry, felt his stomach churn. Shin, why are they looking at me like that? Nawaki didn't understand the murderous glares he was receiving. Shin shook his head. Let's do this another time, Nawaki. We're not up for it today. Shin rejected his offer. Nawaki was both disappointed and relieved. Disappointed that they weren't accepting his offer, but relieved that he got to keep his money. Nawaki left, dejected, chased away by Tsunade. Orochimaru has no shame, taking a mission like that. Only he would do such a thing, Tsunade grumbled. Are we still having dinner? I've lost my appetite, Kushina said. Of course we're eating. We'll starve if we don't. Shin wasn't going to let a little smell ruin his dinner. Food was important, especially for training. Even with his perfect sage body, he needed to eat. In the end, only Shin ate dinner that night. Kushina and the others had no appetite. Mikoto, you're living here now. Won't the Ucha clan say anything? Shin asked. Mikoto shook her head. I'm practically invisible in the Ucha clan. No one will say anything. Mikoto might be pretty, but in the world of shinobi, beauty wasn't everything. Her quiet personality made her blend in. Don't worry, no one will say anything about my student, Tsunade said confidently. Shin rolled his eyes. She made it sound like she was some kind of big shot. Hey, brat, are you looking down on me? Tsunade caught his expression and glared at him. Ha ha, you're mistaken. I was just thinking how amazing you are, Shin said, trying to appease her. Amazing? Shin is way more amazing than you, Kushina declared. Shin glared at Kushina. Was she trying to get him in trouble? Kushina, do you want to taste my fist? Tsunade threatened. What are you going to do? Kushina hid behind Shin, glaring at Tsunade. Come here, I'll punch you so hard, you'll be crying in bed, Tsunade taunted. Threatening me? You think you're so great? Give me 3 years, and I'll surpass you. Kushina retorted. Shin's lips twitched. Was Kushina challenging Tsunade to a duel in 3 years? But even in 3 years, Kushina wouldn't be a match for Tsunade. Unless she became the Ninetales Jinkriki and could perfectly control its power, defeating Tsunade within 3 years was impossible. But Kushina couldn't become the Jinkriki now. The position was already filled. And even if she did become the Jinkriki, controlling the Ninetales' power was no easy feat. Heh, fine. I'll be waiting. But that doesn't mean I can't beat you up now. Tsunade hadn't given up on teaching Kushina a lesson. She approached Kushina with a mischievous grin. Shin, help! Kushina was scared of that grin. She clung to Shin. Even Shin can't help you now. I'm going to teach you some manners, little girl. Tsunade reached for Kushina. Come on, Tsunade, why are you bullying Kushina? She's still weak. There's no satisfaction in that, Shin said, stopping her. HMPH, I knew you'd protect her. Tsunade let Kushina go, giving Shin face. Kushina bit Shin's arm lightly. What did he mean by she's still weak? That was insulting. Tsunade, do you know of any Kekkei Genkai users in Konoha? Shin asked Tsunade during breakfast the next morning. Tsunade looked at him curiously. Kekkei Genkai are rare in the shinobi world. There aren't many in Konoha? There's the Ucha clan's Sharingan, the Hyuga clan's Byakugan, the Senju clan's Sage Body, your Uzumaki clan, and the Kurama clan. Shin's eyes lit up when he heard the name Kurama clan. He had completely forgotten about them. Thanks to Tsunade's reminder, he remembered. The Kurama clan possessed a powerful Kekkei Genkai, 5 senses control. A genjutsu that could control the 5 senses and even turn illusions into reality. It was the pinnacle of yin release. Yin release could create form out of nothingness, while yang release could breathe life into form. Together, they could create life. Shin didn't know if this 5 senses control was comparable to Aizen Tsukure's Kaika Suigetsu from Bleach, but it was undoubtedly powerful. It probably wasn't as potent as Kaika Suigetsu, though. Otherwise, the Kurama clan wouldn't be such a small clan. If they could truly control all 5 senses, dominating the shinobi world wouldn't be impossible. Tsunade, are there any Kurama clan members who have awakened their Kekkei Genkai? Shin asked. He wanted to copy this Kekkei Genkai. The Kurama clan might have a powerful ability, but their weak constitutions might prevent them from utilizing it fully. The Kurama clan was known for their frail bodies. They tired easily and probably didn't have large chakra reserves. Chakra was extracted from cells. A weak body meant limited chakra. There used to be quite a few Kurama with Kekkei Genkai. They were once as prominent as the Senju and Ucha clans. But now they've declined. I think there's only one with an awakened Kekkei Genkai. Tsunade answered, curious about his interest in the Kurama clan. That's good. I was afraid there might be none. Shin was relieved. If there were no Kekkei Genkai users in the Kurama clan, he'd have to wait for Yakumo Kurama to be born. But that was over a decade away. He didn't have time to wait. And by then, he might not even need the Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai. Shin, why are you asking about this? Kushina asked curiously. Mikoto and Tsunade were also curious. It's a secret. Shin shook his head. Some secrets were better left unsaid. Tsunade, do you know where this Kurama clan member is? He's in the Konoha torture and interrogation force. With his powerful genjutsu, he's the head of the department. The Konoha torture and interrogation force. It was a position well suited for the Ucha clan, but Hiruzen wouldn't allow it. I want to meet him. Can you take me? Shin asked Tsunade. He couldn't meet the head of the torture and interrogation force on his own. It was an Anbu department. Tsunade looked at Shin, then nodded. You agreed? Aren't you going to ask why? Shin was surprised. Would you tell me if I asked? Shin chuckled awkwardly. He couldn't tell her. Let's go. Tsunade and Shin left. Kushina and Mikoto stayed behind. Even as the Sandaime Hokage's disciple, Tsunade couldn't enter the torture and interrogation force freely. But she could summon its leader, Kurama Kase. Tsunade-sama, you summoned me? Kase was surprised. He hadn't expected the Senju clan princess to seek him out. The Kurama clan was no longer prominent. To him, Tsunade was an important figure. Tsunade looked at Shin. It wasn't her who wanted to see Kase, but Shin. She had no idea what he was planning. Kurama-san, I hear you're quite skilled in genjutsu. I was wondering if you could teach me. Shin said with a smile. But as he spoke, he used an advanced replication card to copy Kase's 5 senses control. He felt his already powerful mental energy surge. Even his ocular power increased, causing a tingling sensation in his eyes. He blinked a few times until the tingling subsided. He could sense a change in his Manjiki Sharingan. It hadn't evolved into the eternal Manjiki Sharingan yet, but it was showing signs of it. Shin was ecstatic. This was an unexpected bonus. Kase looked at Shin, his expression troubled. Shin wanted to learn genjutsu from him, but he wasn't keen on teaching. But if he refused, would he anger Tsunade? She was right here, after all. Tsunade glanced at Shin, puzzled. Why would he need to learn genjutsu from Kase when he had the Manjiki Sharingan? She knew Shin must have another motive. I apologize, but I don't have the time to teach you, Kase said apologetically. He had decided to refuse. He turned to Tsunade. As you know, Tsunade-sama, the torture and interrogation force is quite busy. I don't have the time to teach. He was afraid of angering Tsunade. The Kurama clan couldn't afford to make enemies of her. That's a shame, but I understand. Shin said. Asking for genjutsu lessons was just an excuse. Approaching Kase without a reason would be suspicious. Shin's goal was the Kekkei Genkai, he didn't care about anything else. Whether Kase agreed or refused, it didn't matter. He actually preferred it if Kase refused. He had no intention of taking lessons. Tsunade, let's go, Shin said. Tsunade glanced at him, still clueless about his motives. But since he was ready to leave, she followed. As they left, Kei's eyes widened. Something felt off. Why was Tsunade acting like that kid's follower? It must be his imagination. If Tsunade knew Kei's thought of her as Shin's follower, she would probably punch him. His frail body wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. Tsunade took Uzumaki Shin to meet with Kurama Kei's. The Sandaime Hokage puffed on his pipe, his brow furrowed. Yes, Sandaime-sama. Apparently, Uzumaki Shin wanted to learn genjutsu from Kurama Kei's, but he was refused. An Anbu agent reported. Tsunade and Shin's meeting with Kei's hadn't escaped the Anbu's notice. And if the Anbu knew, Hiruzen would know. I see. Hiruzen nodded, dismissing the matter. Meanwhile, Tsunade and Shin had returned to the courtyard. Shin went straight to his room and activated his Manjiki Sharingan. He could feel the increase in his ocular power. His genjutsu must be even stronger now, but he had no one to test it on. With his immense mental energy, he felt like his genjutsu could manifest into physical attacks. Copying the Kurama clan's Kekkei Genkai had been the right choice. His overall strength had increased, and his genjutsu, which had been his weakest area, was now much stronger. His genjutsu hadn't been weak before, thanks to his Manjiki Sharingan, but it had paled in comparison to his taijutsu and ninjutsu. He examined the changes in his Manjiki Sharingan. His ocular power was immense, but he still wasn't sure when it would evolve into the eternal Manjiki Sharingan. Shin, come out here. Shin heard Tsunade's call and exited his room. Orochimaru and Jiraiya were there, along with their respective genin teams. Shin-kun, long time no see. Orochimaru greeted Shin with a smile, surprising him. Not just Shin, but Tsunade and Jiraiya were also surprised. Orochimaru wasn't the type to initiate conversations. Actually, I wanted to be Shin-kun's genin sensei, Orochimaru declared. Wow, even you have your eyes on this kid, Orochimaru? But his performance at the academy wasn't that impressive, Jiraiya said, looking at Shin with curiosity. If you want to switch sensei, Shin, you can come to me. Orochimaru ignored Jiraiya and continued talking to Shin. Orochimaru, are you trying to steal my student? Tsunade glared at him, her chakra flaring. This snake was trying to poach her student? Did he think she was easy to bully? Such powerful chakra. Orochimaru glanced at Tsunade, a hint of envy in his eyes. Her chakra reserves dwarfed his. But he wasn't afraid of her. Chakra wasn't the sole determinant of strength. Shin-kun, what's your choice? Orochimaru looked at Shin, his eyes filled with interest. Shin shuddered. I'm happy with Tsunade-sensei. I haven't considered switching. Tsunade sighed in relief. She had been worried Shin might actually go with Orochimaru. But she had worried for nothing, Shin wouldn't follow that creep. Orochimaru might be a genius in research, but he was also undeniably creepy. That's a shame. Orochimaru shook his head in disappointment. What are you all doing here? Shin asked Orochimaru and Jiraiya. They wouldn't be here without a reason. We have a mission that requires the three of us. So, you nine will be working together for now. The Sandaime will assign a genin to lead all three teams, Jiraiya explained. I see. Shin nodded, then looked at Tsunade. Tsunade, if you encounter any danger on this mission, run. Oh, Shin, are you worried about me? Tsunade teased. Yeah, it would be a pain if you died out there, Shin said, scratching his head. Tsunade scowled and lightly punched his arm. Can't you say something nice? The mission is urgent. I have to go. Head to Training Ground 24 and wait for your new genin-sensei. Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya left. A mission that required the three of them must be dangerous. But they were all strong, they should be able to handle it. Shin, we're going on a mission together. Nawaki said excitedly. Heh, I'd rather not join you in shoveling manure. Shin's words made Hayashi and Kai, Nawaki's teammates, scowl. Nawaki had blabbed about their manure-shoveling mission. Let's go to Training Ground 24. Shin led the way, followed by Mikoto and Kushina. Nawaki, Minato, and the others followed. At Training Ground 24, their new Jonin-sensei hadn't arrived yet. Shin sat down, waiting. Hey, Shin, have you been on any missions? Nawaki asked. Yeah, just a C-rank mission, Shin replied with a smile. Nawaki jumped up. What? A C-rank mission? That's not fair. Why do we only get D-rank missions? He yelled, attracting the attention of the others. Kushina, you really went on a C-rank mission? Akiko asked. Kushina nodded proudly. There was no need to hide it. HMPH, who knows if that's true, Kai scoffed. He seemed out of place, even his teammates, Nawaki and Hayashi, ignored him. Nawaki had initially tried to befriend Kai, but he had given up. Kai, are you looking for a beating? Kushina stood up, glaring at him. You think I'm scared of you? Kai sneered. Don't waste your breath on him. Just hit him, Shin said to Kushina. Trash talk was pointless. Action spoke louder than words. Kushina nodded and used the adamantine sealing chains, binding Kai instantly. Akiko's eyes widened. Kushina was using the adamantine sealing chains so skillfully. Even she couldn't do that. Akiko, as a Jinkriki candidate, had received special training from Maito. But even so, she could barely use the adamantine sealing chains. She was nowhere near as proficient as Kushina. Kai struggled, humiliated and enraged, but Kushina just looked at him with disdain. Staring at the immobilized Kai, Nawaki whispered to Shin, what jutsu was that? I don't remember sis knowing that. He assumed Tsunade had taught Kushina the adamantine sealing chains. It's the adamantine sealing chains, an Uzumaki clan jutsu, Shin explained. Oh, so Kai should know it too, right? Nawaki glanced at Kai. Him? Shin scoffed. That guy's too talentless. He probably hasn't learned it yet. Shin didn't lower his voice, Kai heard him clearly and almost choked on his own rage. Shin was practically calling him weak to his face. Kushina used the chakra chains to fling Kai away. He crashed into a tree with a groan, almost passing out. That's a small lesson for you. Kushina-san is that strong? Minato exclaimed in surprise. Kai had been bothering him lately, so he knew how strong Kai was. Minato could defeat Kai, but it wouldn't be easy. Kai was talented, more so than Akiko. After that little lesson, Kai didn't try to pick a fight. He had learned his place. An hour passed, but their temporary Jonin-sensei still hadn't arrived. What's taking so long? Tsum grumbled impatiently. Finally, after another half hour, their sensei appeared. Shin didn't recognize him. Hello, I'm Asakawa-ki. You can call me Asakawa-sensei. I'll be your Jonin-sensei for a while. He introduced himself. He seemed like a decent guy. Asakawa-sensei, can we go on a mission? Nawaki asked eagerly. A mission? Sure, I was planning on taking you on one anyway, Asakawa-sensei agreed. Not a D-rank mission, sensei. A higher level one. After learning that Shin and his team had completed a C-rank mission, Nawaki wanted to do the same. Asakawa-sensei frowned and shook his head. It was too soon for them to take on higher level missions. If something happened, he would be held responsible. And these were the students of the Hokuge's 3 disciples. He couldn't afford any mishaps. No matter how much Nawaki pleaded, Asakawa-sensei refused. Nawaki could only sulk. Asakawa-sensei ended up taking them on a weeding mission. The great Uzumaki Shin, reduced to pulling weeds. Shin stared at the field and sighed dramatically. Mikoto giggled. It was rather amusing. A few days ago, he was slaughtering elite Jonin, and now he was weeding a field. What a difference. What's so funny, Mikoto? Shin asked. Guess, Mikoto winked playfully. It was the first time Shin had seen her act so mischievously. Kushina, however, saw it as Shin being captivated by Mikoto. Jealousy flared within her. What are you two doing? Stop flirting and start weeding, she huffed. Kushina, your puffed-up cheeks are so cute. Shin couldn't resist teasing her, pinching her cheeks gently. I'm not cute. Kushina glared at him. She'd rather be called beautiful. Calling her cute made her feel like a child. Mikoto, come weed over here with me. Stay away from him, he's a bad influence. Kushina dragged Mikoto away, leaving Shin feeling a bit hurt. Ninja art, multi-shadow clone jutsu. Dozens of Shin clones appeared beside him. He could have created thousands, but he restrained himself. Get to work. He ordered his clones to start weeding. Nawaki and the others stared in awe at the army of Shin clones. Even Asakawa-sensei was surprised. He couldn't create that many clones. Actually, he didn't even know the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Why didn't I think of that? Kushina smacked her forehead. She was so dumb. Why weed herself when she could use shadow clones? She used the multi-shadow clone jutsu, creating over a dozen clones. Having large chakra reserves was a blessing. Why do you all know jutsu? Nawaki asked enviously. Nawaki, don't tell me you don't know any jutsu. I might have to make fun of you, Shin teased. I know jutsu, but not the shadow clone jutsu, Nawaki grumbled. He knew a few C-rank jutsu, but he hadn't learned the shadow clone jutsu yet. Don't worry, Nawaki. You're only a little behind me. Keep working hard, and you'll catch up. Shin patted his shoulder encouragingly. A little? You're exaggerating. Nawaki protested, looking at the vast difference in their clone count. Don't mind the details. Just keep chasing my shadow. Even though you can't even see it, you have to have dreams. What if they come true? I really want to punch you right now. Nawaki clenched his fists. Shin was getting more and more annoying. Go ahead, try it. You can't beat me anyway, Shin said with a grin. I don't believe you. Nawaki launched a surprise attack, aiming a punch at Shin. He couldn't take it anymore. Shin effortlessly sent Nawaki flying. He landed headfirst in the dirt, his limbs flailing. Shin pulled him out like a radish. Believe me now, he asked, looking at Nawaki's mud-covered face. Shin, why are you so strong after graduation? What's your secret? Nawaki asked, defeated. I was always strong. You just didn't notice. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the first chapter of What If Naruto's Ancestor Had the Copy System? There's so much more to come as Shin's journey unfolds, and if this video gets enough views, the next part will be coming soon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated. Let me know what you think in the comments, your feedback means a lot. See you in the next one.